awash with very many accusations, very many allegations. Now, with all of that into consideration, this is when I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome our very special guest this morning. That is Mr. Vianney Mpungu Luja, Manager Public Affairs at Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And good morning, viewers and listeners.
Well, I'm very glad that you're here.
It's a pleasure.
Very glad. And I'm pretty sure that very many Ugandans, even you as well, you're joining us this morning for this very special conversation because there are very many questions, and I am very optimistic that you have answers to all of these questions. And looking at, of course, the topic at hand. Well, feel free, our viewers, to be part of the conversation as well. Get onto our social media. The hashtag is UBCGMU, and also use our WhatsApp number 0709-602-592. And the topic at hand is addressing the operational challenges at the Entebbe International Airport. Addressing operational challenges at the Entebbe International Airport. Now, for more than half of last week, Ugandans really were awash on social media with very many allegations, very many accusations, and calling out staff members at the Entebbe International Airport over what they called very many problems. One of them was the extortion of fees, illegal fees, looking at unprofessionalism, looking at unfair treatment, especially both at departure and arrival sections. Actually, if I'm sure you did see a number of these complaints, and very many people were complaining. It could be over text, was over audio, video clips, talking about how several of their flights had been made intentionally to miss them over the extortion of fees. There were very many complaints. But first things first, Vianney, what is true and what is not?
First of all, I would like to appreciate the feedback that has been shared by members of the public. We appreciate this feedback because it enables us to improve continuously. Having said that, I also need to add that while Uganda Civil Aviation Authority operates and manages Entebbe International Airport, we do not do this in isolation, but we work together with several other government and private agencies in delivering the mandate. Among these, we have immigration officers, we have handling agents from NAS and DAS that assist airlines in checking in and other formalities. We have port health team that checks for COVID certificates and vaccination cards. We have customs on arrivals. We have a labor desk from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development that is stationed as you enter the departure area, and another team that checks for yellow fever certificates, among others.
Okay.
Having said that, we do not in any way condone the activities that have been referred to by users of the facilities on social media. We know that this may be a few individuals who are doing this in their own capacity. But as the leadership and management of Entebbe International Airport, this is a practice that we are totally against. We do not condone it in any way whatsoever. Yes. And that is why when we receive such feedback, we take action. We have previously provided an email, aviation@caa.co.ug, and other numbers at the airport where we request that in the event that anyone approaches you for this kind of thing, please let us know immediately it happens so that we can intervene and take action. If I'm to give an example from the first, just to show the commitment that management of the airport has towards fighting this vice, from the period 2020 to date, we have received various complaints from different stakeholders in different areas. And as a result of those complaints, we investigated, and where we found some staff of any of the agencies operating at Entebbe International Airport culpable, action has previously been taken. And I can confirm that we have taken action on 26 members of staff during just that period of 2020,
from 2020
to date.
Yes.
And that action has included, among others, dismissal of some of them, cancellation of some of their contracts, and also withdrawal of their airport pass. every staff that operates at Entebbe International Airport is given an airport pass from Uganda CAA. It is what authorizes you to move around the airport areas. And once that is withdrawn, it has far-reaching effects. It means you can no longer work not only at Entebbe, but any of the other airports in the country, and by extension, other airports. Okay. So those are some of the actions we have taken on culprits that have been found culpable to be involved in any of these vices, and we continue to take that action. Yes. Another case in point, when these videos started moving around, we've been analyzing them critically. For instance, there is one where our own staff appeared and seemed to be negotiating for some amount of money with the passenger. Based on that, that staff was arrested on Friday and is being interrogated. The disciplinary process, as per our rules and regulations, has commenced as soon as, and there was also another one from Turkish Airlines who also, there are a lot of people that were mentioning a number of things. He was also held over the weekend and is also being interrogated over those issues. But we want to assure the public and also our staff that when we receive complaints of this nature, we do not just rush to take action, but we first investigate thoroughly. We have CCTV cameras deployed at Entebbe International Airport. So if someone gives us information, we collaborate that information by looking at the footage and also several other things that the security and investigation team takes into consideration. Okay. But we have taken quite a number of steps ever since this came up. And
we'll be getting into those steps much later on. But I do appreciate the fact that you have been on this, you said, since 2020. And yes, there are some cases in point that you have highlighted. But also the fact that this happened and we saw people really coming out for the last couple of days clearly shows that there is some continuity to these vices and habits. And this is what we'd love to know. Why is it still happening? Why are we still registering cases like this? You have been working on several cases, but then now we are looking at this. Matter of fact, there was some, I could say maybe frequent travelers or people who have traveled, talking about their issues. The most recent one again, I think it was still last week. So the issue is, why is there continuity? Is it that there is, yes, you have some policies, you have guidelines, you have, all these things, but is there some laxity along the way? What happens to see that some of these vices come up again? And I mean, we are talking about them right now.
Not really laxity. A lot has been done by management to ensure that this comes to an end. But you know that we are dealing with human beings here. And even these negative actions are actually performed by human beings. So while measures have been put in place, some of those errant human beings have also been using different tactics. But we are not, yes, exactly. But we are not relenting in stopping this. And also it is important to note that while it may appear as if everyone at the airport is involved in this, one thing for a fact is that we have a lot of very good employees who are doing the right thing. Okay. It is only a few bad apples that have unfortunately tainted the name and image of all the others who are doing a very good job.
Yeah, because there'll always be a good employee who is doing
the
job.
The other thing is some of the videos are not necessarily so recent. Okay. If you analyze the cases, you realize that quite a number of them are citing old cases. It's not that all these things have happened now. Some of them happened in the past, but when people saw others coming out, others also came out with their previous experiences. So some cases are really old, but that doesn't save the situation at all. However, we have also noted that while we have received legitimate concerns from various members of the public, there are also those who have made this a fun situation and are recording videos of situations that have not happened at all at Entebbe International Airport. I can give you an example. There was a video of a young man putting on a white shirt with some things, badges here. Yes. A shirt that looks like someone working at the airport, yet he's actually not working at Entebbe International Airport or any airport for that matter. And that young man was acting as if he is talking to passengers, asking them for documents, and speaking very rudely and saying all sorts of things. And that after dealing with one, he picks up the phone and acts as if he's calling another officer, telling them that person is coming, charge them $300. I'm sure you saw that video, and several others. A person watching this video actually thinks that this gentleman is really at the airport, and that is how they are dealing with customers, which is not true at all. So while we have seen legitimate concerns, there have also been very many videos that are talking about things that have actually not even happened and exaggerated. So we appeal to those to love their country more, because when you do such a thing, it is not only viewed by Ugandans here, but even tourists who are planning to come to Uganda are actually watching these videos.
Yes.
And they are imagining that this is the situation, yet it is not necessarily the case. Yeah.
I mean, like the common saying goes that this is the only international airport we have, and it's like the one biggest PR agency we have for Uganda as a country. Well, we're still talking about the operational challenges at the Entebbe International Airport this morning, and I do have Vianney Mpunguluja, the Manager Public Affairs from Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, taking us through some of these challenges. And again, this is after whatever happened last week. We saw very many complaints, accusations that were awash social media. And there are certain cases I would love us to go through one by one. There was one where actually there was an accusation again from some of the people of social media, talking about how some of the UCAA officials, now I don't know if they were the UCAA, probably you throw more light on this, or some of the employees, but we do not know from which stakeholder. Like you said, there are very many people, but usually the people who are operating, talking about the usage of mobile phones. Now, if I remember very well, in 2021, there was a policy that the employees are not expected to be operating on their phones, aside from the supervisors who have that. So what happened? Because clearly we know that it could be a bit of it could be a distraction in its own form. So what happened to that? Because that was again one of the major issues, the fact that this is a sign of unprofessionalism that was raised. What happened to that policy of 2021? Yeah,
first of all, the usage of the phones while on duty for those front staff that interface directly with passengers is not only a distraction, but they are also used in coordinating some of these things. So in 2021, like you have rightly stated, we issued a directive to all the agencies operating at Entebbe International Airport, directing them to inform their staff who interface with passengers through the travel chain not to use or not to have mobile phones on them, except supervisors. However, it was resisted a little bit by those agencies, and somehow there was a little bit of laxity, unfortunately, in enforcing that directive. But following these developments, we have re-emphasized that directive with immediate effect, and we have already communicated to all those agencies operating at Entebbe International Airport, reinforcing that directive that anyone interfacing with passengers should not have a mobile phone, a private mobile phone on them, except the supervisors. We have landlines that they can use for urgent communications, and that of the supervisor. So that will help. It's one of the measures that is going to help us deal with this. Not only that, the other measure that we have put in place is to ask all the agencies to ensure that their staff have name tags written clearly and visibly, so that when you are dealing or interfacing with this staff, you are able to tell exactly whom you are dealing with, and even when you are reporting, it is easier when you refer to a particular name. We have not ended it there. We are also looking at harmonization of operations. As I speak now, when you reach at Entebbe International Airport on departure, we have a labor desk manned by staff from Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development that check especially migrant workers going for employment in the Middle East. They check a number of things, including with the fact that either they have gone through a registered labor external company. If they have gone through privately, still there is a letter of clearance they are supposed to get from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, so they check for this, among others. There is another port health team that checks whether you are fully vaccinated, and if you are not, they check whether you have the COVID-19 test undertaken within 72 hours from time of sample collection to time of departing the airport, and another that checks for yellow fever in that temporary tent area before you access the check-in area. We are now saying we need to harmonize these operations and look at some of those that can be merged. For instance, some of these things can be checked by the check-in agents who operate on behalf of the airlines. The check-in agents have a document verifier just before you check in. So some of these can be handled by those. Some of these other responsibility can be handled with immigration, so that we remove the so many desks and checks and have fewer but more efficient. Because these so many checks are also an avenue for this kind of thing that has been going on. The other thing is because of those so many checks, even before a passenger accesses the check-in area, some passengers have in the process ended up missing flights, and those are some of the complaints we are seeing. So when we reduce this bureaucratic chain of checks and desks, at least the passenger has more time.
I mean, you get to a point where you have a visa to the country you're going to, and then this, you know, the person that is working on you, they're asking you, why are you going where you're going? And I mean, what's that? Doesn't the visa speak for that? Again, you probably have seen, again, one common tweet everybody was talking about. You'll get a visa to a country where you're supposed to be headed, and you will be stopped at the airport because of all that questioning. Does that actually say that you don't trust the embassies that issue these visas? There is a lot of questions around unnecessary questioning when you have the clear documentation to avail for all that.
Yeah, that's correct. And that is some of the things that we're trying to harmonize. However, nevertheless, there are a few individuals where through such questioning, we have actually helped Ugandans. There is a vice which is called human trafficking.
Yes.
And many Ugandans have unfortunately fallen victim to human trafficking, especially first-time travelers. So through the security system and some of these other agencies, they have been trained to the signs that they look out for to see someone who is potentially going to be trafficked. And some of those questions they ask sometimes are pertinent questions aimed at saving or helping this Ugandan. And there, you may have heard of cases last year in Dubai where we had girls stranded.
Yes.
There were other cases in Oman where we have our people that ended up being mistreated, having gone for work and that kind of thing. So when these officials are asking these questions, sometimes it is for a good reason and to protect Ugandans. I can give an example. There have been passengers who travel not with a return ticket, especially to some of these destinations that have been proved to be problematic. When someone is coordinated by human traffickers, they tend to give you two tickets. They give you a ticket, a one-way ticket to your destination. Okay. And they also give you another return ticket separate, instead of giving you one return ticket. And what happens in that case is this person uses the one-way ticket to the destination, and as soon as they reach there, the traffickers who have coordinated their travel cancel this other ticket that was bringing them back immediately. Those cases have been recorded, and some of the victims are actually arising out of that. The other issue that we have noticed that causes problems, especially to destinations where Ugandans end up in problems, you find one individual in a particular country has sent about 20 invitation letters to different Ugandans from totally different places in villages across the country. And they are all they are all invited by one person. So you wonder why one person sends invitation letters to 20 different people. And now when security looks at this, eventually these are the cases where you find that this one person inviting all the 20 is actually a trafficker, a human trafficker. So sometimes when they realize some of these loopholes, they tend to ask some of those questions, and that is for the good and the protection of these Ugandans who end up being trafficked. However, while that is said, they should not take advantage of this to actually mistreat or render a poor service to passengers, to delay them or to ask money from them. They should do this professionally, and that is what we are emphasizing, and that is why we are putting these different measures in place. And another one related to that, which we have agreed on, is that after a passenger has gone through the entire departure chain, from check-in to immigration, and has gone past immigration and is seated waiting to board the aircraft, we are now saying that that person should not be recalled or offloaded in any way whatsoever.
Yes.
If the offloading must happen, because sometimes it may happen because of security or other reasons, it must be with the express authority from Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, and that permission can only be granted by the Director Airports and Aviation Security, or at least the General Manager of Entebbe International Airport,
so
who is also
that
a staff.
Nobody should be recalled.
That one we have agreed is not going to happen again,
okay,
because it used to happen in the past, and it is one of the problem areas that you are seeing people alluding to.
All right, we can't talk about all these, and we failed to talk about what I really want to heavily believe is actually the start of all these issues. When it comes to the documentation, maybe you need to take us through what is the right documentation for a person who is exiting the country and for a person who is entering the country. What documentation is necessary? And this in consideration with the prevailing times, because now, previously we were known to ask the COVID certificates and all of that. But what is necessary for you to present as a document before you actually, what do you have to think about as a document before you get to that airport, whether you're leaving or coming, and in what format? Because I have seen where they tell you, especially now for like the COVID certificates, there are some people, there are some citizens who actually don't have access to their certificates right now, even after they've gotten all their vaccinations. But you reach and they tell you, I want a hard copy. And then there are people who actually have the certificates, but then they will tell you, I want a hard copy. Now, what's the difference between these two? If I have the certificate and it's availing all the information necessary, why does it have to be that complicated? So maybe take us through some of the documentation necessary for the entry and exit, and in what format?
The basic requirements for travel. First of all, one needs to have a passport. After that, if the destination you are going to requires a visa, then you need to go ahead and secure that visa. You need to have your air ticket with you. Then it is advisable that you speak to your airline and find out the specific destination requirements. There are some requirements that are specific to destinations. For instance, the requirement for yellow fever is not for all countries, but countries like China, Tanzania, South Africa, for instance, require that you go with a yellow fever card. So the airline can advise you on that, and if the destination does require it, you need to have it with you. Then for all passengers departing Entebbe International Airport, all arriving at Entebbe International Airport, the current protocol is that you must be either fully vaccinated, having undertaken all the doses. That is if you are of AstraZeneca. There are some vaccines which are one dose, like Johnson & Johnson.
Yes.
But you need to have a vaccination certificate. If you do not have it, then you need to undertake a COVID-19 test within 72 hours from time of sample collection to time of boarding aircraft departing Entebbe International Airport. So the validity is 72 hours that is looked at. There are some exemptions in that regard. The exemption applies to children 5 years and below. But anyone above that, you need these basic requirements. Then on top of that, it is advisable that you report to the airport in time, at least 3 hours prior to your scheduled departure time. This is because most international airlines close their check-in counters at least an hour to the flight's departure time from Entebbe International Airport.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some passengers have ended up arriving at the airport just an hour to the flight's departure time, and they forget that on arrival, they have to first go through certain checks, security, and all these other checks that I earlier on mentioned about before they even reach the check-in counter. And yet you should have checked in an hour before the flight departs Entebbe International Airport. So those are the basic requirements, but on top of that, destinations have added other requirements. The other one, specific to migrant workers going to the Middle East, I alluded to it a little bit earlier on.
Yes.
For those, we also require, as a government, a clearance letter from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. It is also required that they have gone through registered labor externalization companies, registered by the Ministry of Gender. But if you haven't gone through that and you are private, privately undertaking the trip, you still need that letter of clearance on top of all these other requirements that have been mentioned earlier on.
Okay. Now, also one thing we need to talk about, again, that was really quite dominant among us, the complaints, the businesses around the airport. I mean, I do understand that usually the prices won't be as normal as the same business outside this entity, but there is also a belief that these prices are really, especially that the prices that imposed on several products, depending on what business. Looking at the restaurants, for example, the prices are highly inflated. I don't know, is there any regulation into that? Is that the mode, I mean, of operation? Do they determine these prices? What is the process? Because they're really very extremely high.
Yes, while some of the prices of the facilities, services at Entebbe International Airport may be what you are referring to, this is not does not apply only to Entebbe.
Yes.
Airports across the world, the services provided at those airports, for instance, through restaurants, the prices are generally slightly a little bit higher than what you'll find in the normal market. For many of the people who have traveled will tell you that when you are taking a meal at an airport or a cup of tea, the amount that you normally pay in other restaurants in Kampala is certainly not the same. And that applies across the globe. So that's important for that to be understood.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that isn't about to be solved and sorted.
No,
for now.
we engage those service providers. But I must say that the prices are generally competitive if you compare with other airports. I think when we are looking at that, we should not compare it with prices in Kampala, but compare perhaps with prices at other airports for some of those commodities.
Well, operational challenges at the Entebbe International Airport, and we do have the Manager Public Affairs, that is Vianney, here this morning to address most of these issues, the complaints, and also take us through some of the measures that have been decided by the UCAA on the way forward, so that there is quite a smooth, it's quite a smooth process for a Ugandan leaving the country, or a non-Ugandan getting into the country, or a Ugandan getting into the country, looking at a very seamless process for entry and exit of the country. Get onto our socials. The WhatsApp number is 0709-602-592, and the hashtag on UBC, our page is hashtag UBCGMU. That is a Twitter. Let us know what you think about this. I do have already some feedback coming in. This is Mate from Kasese saying that these bad vices should be completely stopped. Honestly, the staff at the airport need to have professional ethics. What's the way forward with that? Is there any training for them? We need to know that. And I do have some more feedback coming in from Fred from Bulambuli, saying that our fellow Ugandans treat us like strangers when coming back to our home country. During departure, still more problems, which results into us missing flights. There is need for them to benchmark from some of the best airports in the world. I guess they could bring some of these mannerisms back at home. And there is a lady here called Jen, says, I had everything, the vaccination card, certificate, but I was still forced to take a test. Then what is really required of us? So there was a double, she had the certificate and was forced to take another test. Is that okay? Is that legal?
Certainly that is not okay, and it is not legal.
Yes.
If at all that happened, it is highly regretted, and that is one of the mistakes that are being corrected. It is very clear that once you are fully vaccinated, there is no need for you to undertake a COVID-19 test.
Okay.
And we are emphasizing that to the Port Health team that is implementing that directive. Then the other issue that the other person mentioned about the training of staff. Yes, first, as a primary responsibility, the different agencies operating at the airport, such as immigration, customs, handling agents, and all others, have a primary responsibility to train their staff. But while that is there, We also occasionally come in to cover the gaps because we are experiencing these complaints. We realize that there are gaps.
Yes.
So we occasionally come in and provide general training, especially in the area of customer care, to all those front office staff that operate at Entebbe International Airport. But now one of the things that has been agreed in light of this wave of complaints is that we are going to further enhance that training to become more regular and more stringent across the globe for all the staff of all the agencies operating at the airport, so as to enhance the customer experience. We, besides the training, we have also looked at a number of other measures. These are the numbers that we provided for people to call on for assistance.
Yes.
We are now running them more frequently on flight information display screens. We are also running announcements at intervals, urging the public that in case of any challenge, please call us on this and other numbers. We're also displaying them within the terminal building. We had previously displayed a number for duty operations officer. That has always been there.
The duty operations officer
has always been there. But in light of this, we have now provided others of more senior officials, including the general manager, including that of the manager operations, and that of the manager aviation security, just to escalate this a little bit more and to show the commitment that we are putting to ensure that we put an end to this vice.
All right. And also, maybe before we, as we are winding up on this topic, Vienna, talk about the receipt issuing for any service that you're paying for. Maybe right there at the moment could be extra luggage. Do I expect to have a receipt? Because again, that was another problem, because very many complaints came along these lines of, I made this payment, I did not get a receipt. Now, what shows that I made this payment? Either this money is going in the wrong hands, or I am not supposed to be making that payment at a given time. When do I expect to get a receipt when I make a payment for what exactly?
Definitely anything that is paid for has to be receipted. Whether it is payment for extra luggage, like that video that went viral that we saw, you definitely have to receipt that payment for excess baggage. If someone doesn't receipt, it means that there is a problem, that there is something they are trying to do that is not right.
Some fishy and sketchy business going on, yes.
And that is why we look at those cases and handle them in a disciplinary manner. Even if you are paying for, you have missed your flight and you are being rescheduled onto that of the next day, the airline still has to give you a receipt for that particular amount, whether $50 or $100, that you're paying for that. So anything that is not receipted should be an eye-opener, that I'm paying for something that I'm not supposed to pay for.
Okay. Yes. All right. Any final and last comments on this to the Ugandans out there, especially the disgruntled ones about the services?
First of all, we apologize to Ugandans and users of our facilities. We do not condone these vices that are being complained about. We do not condone them in any way whatsoever. That is why we appreciate the feedback that has been shared with us, and that is why we have been able to take action on some of the errant staff that are giving a bad name to all the other good staff doing good service, providing good services at Entebbe International Airport. We shall continue to investigate the cases that have been reported to us, and I appeal to the public that some complaints, you do not necessarily have to put them on social media for all and sundry. We have a WhatsApp line that we have provided. We have an email, aviation@caa.co.ug. Kindly inbox us. Even on Twitter, instead of going public, you can still inbox us at Uganda CAA. We take action onto the issues that we get, and the culprits are apprehended, and the feedback is given direct to the passenger who has raised a complaint. We have also noted some feedback that is unfortunately not entirely legitimate, and that is discouraged, especially the things like the other video that I alluded to, where someone was acting as if they are at the airport when they are not. such things give a bad name to the country, not only to the airport, but to the entire country. And we have a lot of tourists coming in and others who plan to come in. So when they see some of these videos, especially those that are not correct, it gives them the impression that this is what is happening in Uganda at Entebbe, and it discourages them from coming. Yet when we have tourists coming in, it does not only benefit us in the aviation industry, it benefits hotels, it benefits tour companies, it benefits a lot of businesses throughout the value chain. So let us love our country more and only share things that are legitimate, and kindly continue to cooperate with us by providing us information and supporting us in eradicating this vice through cooperation. But we thank you so much for that feedback. We do not take it for granted. And we are seeking to improve every other day.
Okay, that is Vianney Mpunguluja, the Manager Public Affairs at Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, talking about some of the measures they have taken to ensure that it is a smooth process for you as you're trying to exit the country or getting into the country through the Entebbe International Airport. And I will tell you something, Vianney, we are looking and we would love to see progress. We want to see these changes. At the end of the day, it's the Entebbe International Airport and it's for us Ugandans. So we're yet to see more improvements getting in there. Well, we do have sports updates coming up in a few from your man, that is Ruben Mpima Chibidango. Don't forget, we do have the GMU Extra as well queued up. Well, I have to leave you, and I want to wish you a wonderful Monday morning and a very productive week ahead. I am Philomena Masco. Good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.